Hello, hope you're well. It's me, Shinrabit, and we need to talk about Scorn. Now, Scorn was developed by a Serbian developer called EBB Software. Now, I remember seeing this game around 5 or so years ago, and I remember being intrigued by it even then. But since then, I forgot it exists, only seeing little bits and bobs spread through the years. So, I was surprised and extremely curious when I saw this pop into the stores. But what shocked me the most was the complete contrast in reviews. Scorn is pulling a deadly premonition on our asses, with some reviewers giving it a perfect score, or close to it. Then there's a few giving it 2s out of 10s and saying it's the worst game since Agony. But we will take a deeper dive into those reviews later. I sat and I finished Scorn over the period of about 2 sessions. It took me around 4 hours to complete, and trust me, there is so much I want to discuss, so I'm going to structure this video as followed. First, I'm going to give my thoughts and opinions to Scorn, and together we will go over what I liked and what I disliked. Then we're going to look through a few of the contrasting reviews and see why this game is so polarizing for fans and critics. After that, we will step away and give our overall and final thoughts and see what side of the fence I sit on regarding Scorn. So sit back as we talk dick buildings and fleshy acid spewing chickens in Scorn. So, Scorn doesn't have a traditional story. I wake up as a humanoid figure that is in this dark, desolate room with these claustrophobic tunnels where the pillars look like they are made out of xenomorphs. There is no dialogue, or there's not even collectibles you can pick up that explain what is going on. The world itself is the main character, one could say, and the figure you play is just a vessel and the means to explore this world. This character. To be completely honest, I never really knew what my goal was. It wasn't until the very ending, which I will not go into just in case you've not played it, that I felt like there was some kind of meaning to it. I know there is a lot of metaphorical imageries, and I know there's probably already a bunch of videos out there trying to deconstruct it, but I was happy from what I took away from it and the story it told me individually. So if you are looking for something that tells a constructed and detailed story, this is not for you. It's really about opening your mind to this, what looks like an old, unearthly civilization, and pick up small clues of what was once here. Now let's talk about what I enjoyed most about this game, and that is the artistic style. The Geiger-esque world with Cronenberg body horror. This is one of the most visually impressive games I have ever played. And I don't mean graphically. I mean how the light hits through the flesh-like ceilings and how the giant structures tower over you, making you feel like an ant walking through a nude beach. Yeah, there's a lot of boobs, butts and sexual imagery. And all the building foundations are all super horny. But that's the Geiger way, right? But seriously, this game really does immerse you into the world, and as sickening and morbid as it really is, it's quite breathtaking. I found myself just staring off and taking everything in. Once I knew there was no collectibles to find, I still wanted to explore every nook and cranny to see what the developers crafted. The look, combined with the music and sound effects, also work to make you feel uneasy and uncomfortable. The score is incredible when it's there, but the game also does silence perfectly. Sometimes you will hear nothing but clanks of machinery or the squelch as you traverse the remains of something unidentifiable, which adds to this atmosphere. This game is masterfully crafted visually, but how does the game actually play? It's essentially a puzzle / survival horror game. The opening 40 minutes you don't even come across an enemy. It's a really slow paced opening with a mixture of puzzles, and some are simpler than others, but you even get smaller puzzles within the bigger ones. Pretty much the entire game you are trying to solve something to get to the next area. And being a fan of the survival horror genre that is usually full of puzzles like this, it felt really welcoming. However, it did pull a few Silent Hill moves where there was a couple of infuriating puzzles where you had to rotate these blocks, and I just had to sit there spamming it for about 10 minutes until I got it. Now for the combat, and this is what almost made me not want to continue playing, because the first 30 minutes of combat I hated. I had this really interestingly designed weapon that felt like it was a living organism, but every encounter felt like I couldn't have a fight without me getting hit at least 2 or 3 times. And when health doesn't replenish and is really rare to find, this infuriated me. The closest thing I compare it to is trying to fight a zombie in Resident Evil only using a knife. Like, I'm hitting it, but it's definitely going to grab me at least once. This was really killing what so far was an extremely great experience, but I came back and I was ready, and my survival horror training took over, and I legged it past everything, and I only fought when I was backed into a corner. Then I got my first gun, and I really started to understand how this game was supposed to be played. I spent the rest of the game treating ammo like gold dust and tried to avoid any confrontation. And that's how the combat grew on me, by avoiding it. Now there are only 4 weapons in total, but they are really well crafted, and they look like they've been pulled right out of Cronenberg's Existence movie. They feel satisfying to shoot, but you don't want to get caught being out of ammo because reloading or changing weapon animation is so slow. So you have to make sure you always are ready in case you get ambushed and need to fight your way out. There isn't much when it comes to the variants of enemies, and they all mostly spit acid at you. I will say, other than the fleshy chickens, the enemies are probably the weakest designed in the entire game, which is a shame. I did come across a few technical issues. There was a couple of graphical glitches, and at one point I had this awful sound repeating that I could only fix by restarting the entire act. I also heard a lot that the checkpoints are bad, but in my experiences I never had this problem. I would say if you are sensitive to graphic violence, maybe stay away. Our character gets put through the ringer, and there is a few darkly hilarious moments where you have to kill or torture something to be able to advance. It's like a Hellraiser version of the elephant scene in It Takes Two, you know, where you brutally murder a cute plushie to make your daughter cry. Yeah, that's a pretty dark game. Anyway, one of the first puzzles in the game, you have this little guy who looks terrified, and you end up scooping his arm off and brutalising him just to get his arm so I could open a door. You can save him, but I didn't know that at the time, so I'm sorry, my dude. Anyway, that's my overall thoughts on Scorn. I will delve a little deeper into my verdict of the game soon, but first I want to just let everyone know that I am not a game reviewer, and I would never pretend to be. Take what I say like hearing it from a friend that just loves and adores video games, just like I'm sure most of you guys watching this. Now, let's head over to Metacritic and swirl in the tornado that are the Scorn reviews. Right, so here we are on Metacritic for Scorn. Now, like I said earlier, this game has been so polarizing, so I wanted to come onto here so we can sort of try and discuss and see what is so different. Why are people in it? Like, I've seen people say it should be rewarded for Game of the Year, and then I've seen people say it's the worst Game of the Year, and it's so insane. So let's take a look through some reviews. Now, I don't want to open up the whole pages. I just kind of want to look and see the short paragraphs, see what people are saying. I don't want to spend hours on this, but it's just a bit of fun. We can have a look through. So, as you can see on this critic review, Attack of the Fanboy, Scorn is a special experience for anybody looking to have their expectations subverted for what a good horror game can be. It's gory, surreal, provocative, dive into difficult or even taboo topics, and is wonderfully crafted and near perfectly optimized. The game's themes and visuals are challenging and extremely mature, but executed with great subtlety. The game is a technical marvel and concise as any horror game should be, so as to not overstate its welcome. Okay, well, obviously this is a 10 out of 10, 100 Metacritic review. This is a perfect score. And obviously the one thing I could take from it, from just this short thing, is I really like the visuals and the way the game feels and how it's crafted. And like I said in my review, that it is crafted so well, and it is one of the best looking games I've ever watched or played. Watched it. Some people probably agree with that, the haters. I kind of agree with a lot of this is saying. I don't think it's a 10 out of 10. I don't even think it's a 9. I would sit near this 8s or 7s for me personally, because I do think there's a lot wrong with it as well. But the things it does and the things that this guy is talking about, I do agree. I mean, I kind of like what this guy said about the subtlety, sort of, because it's very subtle. It's not completely in your face. You know, you've got all of this crazy stuff, and you just like a small bit of light shining through is like the bit that really like took my breath away, is the subtle moments and things. So I kind of agree with what he's saying there. You know, without reading this full guy's review, but if he's gave it 100%, I'm guessing he really likes the combat as well, as which I wasn't as big of a fan. But let's take a look at some of the worst, and like I say, this is still critic reviews. So we got Game Rant 20, that's 2 out of 10. So it's got a 10 out of 10 and also a 2 out of 10, which I just find so fascinating. So let's read through this one. Finishing Scorn does not leave players with a sense of satisfaction. It's not scary and it's not fun. Most will be glad that it's over, and at least it's mercifully short. It only takes about 5 hours to beat Scorn, and our playthrough ended with us earning 11 out of the 12 of the game's achievements. Scorn gives players absolutely no reason to return to it, and quite frankly, it doesn't offer much reason to play it in the first place. I feel like that, I know it's only the small sort of paragraph, it's not the full review, but I feel like they spent a lot of time talking about how the game's short and not really replayable, but they're not really gone into that much detail with it. They don't really say what they like about it, what they don't like about it, other than it's not scary and it's not fun. Without reading properly into it, I don't know what they mean too much, but when they say there's no reason to return to it, now that for me has always been an interesting thing, because there's so many games out there. I mean, I'm sure we have a massive backlog of games, and I do find it weird when people give something shit and say that it's not replayable, because like a game like Scorn, I finished it. I don't want to go back. There's not many games that I do really want to go back to. I mean, maybe some of my favourite games of all time I'll go back to, but nowadays I just feel like there's so many games that having one great experience is fine. I will say on the other side of that I think it's £30 in the UK anyway. It's about 30-35. That is expensive for the 4 hours it took me to complete the game, and I probably won't play this game again, especially anytime soon. Maybe I will in a few years time, but I will say that the price for the amount of time is a little bit too much. I got it on Game Pass, so I didn't have to pay anything. And that, for me, was like, it was 4 hours of just, I really enjoyed. I didn't have to pay a ridiculous amount of money. Now, if I would have paid the £30, maybe, and I finished after 4 hours, I would probably be a little bit like, oh, is that it? Well, that's £30 gone. Because, yeah, I do, it's a tricky one, because I also understand that they need to make the money back and blah 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 and all that, and I don't understand. I'm not going to pretend like I understand them, all of that side of things. But as a personal point of view, if I did spend £30, I would probably be a bit disappointed or a little bit underwhelmed. But I think not wanting to return to it, not necessarily is a bad thing. I just think it was a great little experience for me. I really enjoyed it, and that's it. I'm done. And I'll probably remember it because it was so visually striking, and because I remember the game, I might want to go back to it in the year's time and go, you know what? I want to have a look at. I want to just look around that world again. You know, I want to. If I'm feeling a bit morbid one day, I'll put it on, and you know, everyone to their own. But 2 out of 10. I don't see how it can be a 2 out of 10. I think the game has what it does well. It does it too well to be a 2. Even if you're not a fan of the combat, even if you're not a fan of the length or the replayability, 2 I think is too harsh. Let's have a look at some more bad ones. VGC. Scorn is one of the most beautiful worlds you'll see in a game, if you can see beauty in its grotesque. I completely agree with that statement. It is a beautiful game, but it is also grotesque, so it's depending on, you know, the individual. It's just a shame that the world is also home to a frustrating, puzzle-heavy adventure filled with aimless wandering. Now, it's only 2 lines, but I do agree with this one a little bit more. I still think 40 is low, but then at the same time, the style of game it is, if you don't like it, I think a 4 is fine. I think 2 is too much, but 4, okay. I mean, they say it's beautiful, yep, but like you say, that's not the only thing about a game. You need other things. Frustratingly puzzle-heavy adventure. Now, I think some of the puzzles work. Like I said in my review, there was maybe 2 puzzles that I just didn't like, and I was just like, do I have to do this? But other than that, I enjoyed most of the puzzles. I mean, it's a puzzle game, so being puzzle heavy is fine, because that's what it is. It's a puzzle game with 1 or 2 frustrating puzzles. But again, it's people's opinions. If somebody doesn't like puzzle games, then it's probably not for them. But then to go and give it a 4 because it has puzzles in, puzzle heavy, maybe a bit harsh. Aimless wandering. Now, I feel like they haven't quite got the point of the journey of the game. For me, like, what I took away from it is, because I even said that I didn't really know what my goal was. I was just sort of going to the next point, and it wasn't until the end that I kind of felt like there is a meaning to this, there is something to this. But I think that's what they went for. I think that's what the gamers went for. But the thing is, when they try and make a game like that, you're gonna get comments like this, because some people want that story, and when you're just aimlessly wandering around and you're a little bit confused, thinking what's going on, it's going to be a negative for a lot of people. Let's do one more bad one. Okay, GameSpot. What's GameSpot got to say? So, the restrictive save and unbalanced combat combine to make much of Scorn's adventure a frustrating slog. Now, I said that I heard a lot of people talk about the checkpointing and the saving. I didn't have any problems, and I died maybe 4 or 5 times in my playthrough, and the checkpoints were absolutely fine. But maybe if you die in the wrong point, or if you get to a point where you've not got enough health, I could understand that you could probably ruin your experience. Unbalanced combat. Again, I also said that the combat was not good at first. The first 30 minutes, 40 minutes, I did not like. But then it really grown on me. But then I can understand why somebody would give it a negative for the combat, because I think overall, it's not that good. Betraying the initial promising opening hours that emphasises puzzle solving and atmosphere above everything else, even with the disappointing smaller puzzles. Okay, well, I agree with that. I think it did open up with puzzle solving and atmosphere above everything else. It did, with a few disappointing smaller puzzles, which I also admit to. The overarching ones that are the centerpieces of each act are satisfying to slowly put together. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I agree with that one. Like I said, like there was a few smaller puzzles I didn't like, but the big ones, the major ones, because like I said, they had puzzles within puzzles. So like the act has like one massive puzzle you got to try and solve. How do I get through this? How do I get to the next area? And there's loads of other rooms within these big areas with little puzzles thrown in. So you solve these little puzzles to solve the overarching main puzzle. That's kind of essentially how it works, and I think they've captured that pretty well. And yeah, there's a few of the smaller puzzles are annoying, but the big puzzles, the overarching, are quite satisfying. But no but not captivating enough to distract from the brutally unfair challenge along the way. There's simply too much in Scorn that works to push you away rather than pull you deeper into it, making its relatively brief adventure a difficult one to suggest give you a time to. Okay, I think the things that it pulls you in with, it says that there's not a lot pulling you in, but for me, I was hooked and pulled in because of the visuals, the atmosphere, the sound, and then the combat eventually. The puzzles, most of the puzzles pulled me in, but I do agree that there was a few things that pulled you away. These guys are saying that there was more pushing you away, which I think there was more pulling me in, and there was one or two little things pulling me away, pushing me away. I'm not too mad at that review. You know, I disagree. I don't think it's a 40, but I'm not going to sit here and argue. Back onto a positive one, yeah? So we got Power Unlimited. So this is a 9 out of 10. Scorn is a filthy game, especially thanks to the sick design that you both loathe and respect at the same time. It contains unique puzzles, an atmosphere that will give you the creeps and might even make you nauseous, even after adjusting the video settings to your liking. Okay, there's not a lot of detail in this little review. Again, the really high positive, they're talking about the atmosphere, they're talking about the visuals and how it's quite grotesque and sickening, just like the Attack of the Fanboy one. And I agree. I'm going to agree. Let's have a look. So we got well played. Scorn is a feast for the eyes, a buffet for the mind, but not for those of a weak stomach. It satisfies the morbid and curious with its odd forms of somber tapestries. Two big words there for me. No, but again, the positive ones are only really focusing on the visuals, the atmosphere. Again, you know. So one thing that I'm taking from this is the people that love the game are so into the one thing. Yeah, it's the old atmosphere, you know, the things that I was gushing over, and they're just so into that. And without reading that into their full reviews, but that's the thing that they're focused on. There's no real mention of the combat. There's no real mention of the survival mechanics, like, you know, the low on ammo. There's no mention that there's only really one boss. There's no mention of there not being much of a story and stuff. Like, they're all about, it's a great world, great atmosphere, great music, 10 out of 10. The other things, whatever. And then the negatives are focusing like solo just on the things that the other people are forgetting. Like, so the not so great combat, the not so great puzzles, they're taking that and not talking about how good this game looks and feels and sounds. It's a weird one. So you know, I feel like from this there's such good highs, and the people who are high on it are focusing on the highs, and there is quite a lot of lows, and the people that are low on it are focusing on that lows, which is, I think, why we have this such big gap and why it's so polarizing. You know, I think that might, I don't think it fully answers the question, but I think we have a more of an understanding, well, I certainly do, of why this game is so polarizing, because there's such highs and there's such lows, and depending on what mood you go into, you can either go into it and one thing can ruin the whole game, but then one thing can save a game, you know. Like, I went into this and the combat almost ruined the game. The combat, if I enjoyed the combat as much as I did that first half an hour for the rest of the game, I'd probably come out and said 4 out of 10. Looked really nice, but the combat it's poor. It got frustrating and I did not enjoy my experience. But that could have easily happened. When there's one negative thing or one pretty bad thing, it can ruin your whole experience. But it's also vice versa. If there's a few bad things but then it looks so amazing, you can sort of forget those other things exist. The one thing that I think is, I don't think it is 100%. I don't think it's a 10 or a 9, but it certainly isn't a 2, a 3 or a 4 either. Well, I don't want to spend too long looking at these reviews. I feel like I've taken away what I wanted to. Everyone seems to agree that it looks amazing. In just my opinion, I think the game has to be around the 7 mark because it has such good highs that are 10s and it has lows that are maybe the combat I would give like a 4 or 5 and some of the other little bits and bobs. I think 7 or an 8, or if you're not too fond of the game, maybe a 6, 7, and then if you are really liking the game but there's a few things are annoying, give it a 7. And then if you really like the game but you can see the negatives as well, I think an 8. I think anything higher for me is too high. Anything lower than a 6 would be too low. And that's kind of where I stand on it. I've kind of jumped into the next segment already. Yeah, so my final verdict of the game is it's masterfully crafted, and it's some of the stuff it does is a masterpiece for me. Just let down by just a few smaller things that just knock it down a little bit, and there was a few things that almost ruined my whole experience, so I have to knock a few points down for that. But I'm not a reviewer. I play games for fun. I had fun with it. I enjoyed it. 3.5 hours of the game was really good. There was about half an hour where I wanted to run away, run in the opposite direction. But it grew on me again, and for that, and I didn't pay anything for it. It was on Game Pass. I would recommend this game to certain people, but then there's also a lot of people that I would say maybe this might not be for you. I kind of feel like this is like a Deadly Premonition or a Death Stranding sort of thing, where some of it is so amazing, and I would recommend all 3 of those games to anybody, and all 3 of those games are really good. I don't think Scorn is on the level as Death Stranding or Deadly Premonition and things. I don't think that. I would recommend it for somebody, but then I'd be worried about recommending it because I feel like somebody could play it and just absolutely despise the game and think that it was boring, and as we've seen, 2 out of 10s, so yeah, that's my final sort of verdict. So I recommend the game. Go and play the game. If you don't have Xbox Game Pass, maybe wait for a sale if you are worried about the length, but if you've got loads of money, go and buy it. It's good. It's really atmospheric. The mood is incredible. Absolutely stunning visually. The music and the sound effects are some of the best I've ever played. And if you can look past a few little bits and bobs that aren't as good, you are going to have a great time with it, just like I did. And I think we will leave that there. I don't want this video to be too long. I hope you took stuff away from this. Like you say, like if you want actual in-depth review, technically well-made reviews, or if you want to know the meaning of the game, this video is not that. This video was just to give my opinion, and I wanted to answer the question of why is this so polarizing, and I hope I answered them. And if you did enjoy this, please leave a like. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. I hope that you've enjoyed this journey so far. This is the 2nd month I've been doing this, so make sure that you share this with your friends and let's try and grow. Let's get this Shination going. What do you guys say? I say, Peaces Deuces, Deuces Peaces.